This week on Dance of Joy, we talk about Fat Saturn, learn a Myposian kids game, and get schooled on Balki's vests by our newest internet friend. All that and more as we watch Season 2, Episode 17 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Oh, hello, listener, and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. My name is Imran, and joining me every week through this 80s sitcom reality is my sister, Sophia. What's up, Sophia?
Hey, what's up, Imran? I am doing great. It's a beautiful day outside. I just came in from a long bike ride.
Oh, you did you?
I did.
I hope you locked that stuff up there. What kind of lock you got? One of those kryptonite?
I brought it inside my apartment.
Oh, well, now that's smart and completely relevant to today's episode. We are going to be talking about Perfect Strangers Season 2, Episode 17, titled Tenspeed and Soft Touch. 10-speed and soft touch, Sophia.
10-speed.
10-speed.
And soft touch.
Soft touch. What does this mean?
Well, the title of this episode was based upon the title of a short-lived 1980 detective series called 10-speed and Brown Shoe.
Oh, 10-speed and Brown Shoe. Okay.
Which also aired on ABC, and that series starred Ben Vereen as 10-speed and Jeff Goldblum as Brown Shoe.
I love both of those guys, Ben Vereen and young Jeff Goldblum.
Yes, so I suppose the title of this episode made a lot of sense to people in 1987, but I have never heard of this show.
So, this is going to really confuse a lot of people. But if you open the TV guide after you finish the crossword puzzle and it's been in the bathroom a bunch of times and it's all wrinkly and maybe a little damp. But the description for this episode read, Balki and Larry decide to be big brothers to a neighborhood kid they caught shoplifting, and the youngster becomes the number one suspect when Larry discovers his bike is missing.
Uh-oh. This episode, as every other episode, stars Bronson Pinchot and Mark Lynn Baker, and we'll tell you a little bit later who plays the boy in this episode. It aired on February 11th, 1987. Act 1, let's get into it. Now, Act 1, as many other episodes, opens at Ritz discount, but the first thing I noticed...
Yeah.
I watched this episode a few times this week. The very first thing I noticed was that Balki and Larry both have so much hair suddenly. Like big, fluffy, poofy, like considerable hair growth. I wonder almost if this episode was filmed later in the season and aired out of order.
You know what? That's interesting. I was trying to figure out what was bugging me about these two. And
there's so much hair compared with last week's episode.
I was like, wait a minute. Do you guys need a haircut? How did this grow?
It all looks good. They both have very thick, healthy hair. I'm kind of jealous of their hair, but I just noticed that it seemed a lot more than the last episode.
Listen, there's no balding issues with these two, which makes me jealous because I have problems on top. But these guys almost have full-on mullets. Mark Lynn Baker's got a curly mullet, and Bronson Pinchot's mane.
They both have good hair.
Oh, his mane is luscious. They do have fantastic hair.
It's just thick and poofy. Anyway, that was my first thing that I noticed.
Anyways,
back at Ritz, Act 1, we're at Ritz, and Larry is surrounded by a bunch of boxes and there's like a delivery guy who keeps bringing in more. Larry's going through all this stuff in the boxes. Meanwhile, a teenage boy enters the shop, and Balki notices him and goes over to him, and asks him if he needs any help, and the kid goes, "Where do you keep your T-shirts?" And Balki goes, "Well, I keep them in my drawer." And then he laughs at his own joke, slapping his leg, looking up to the sky with his classic, "Where do I come up with them?" The kid, of course, is like a surly teenage kid who does not think it's funny. Balki shows him where the T-shirts are. He tries to start helping him find his size, and the kid stops him. He's like, "Hey, don't hustle me." And Balki just takes a step back. He goes, "Okay, you look around first, and then I'll hustle you."
I'll hustle you.
So that's our little opening exchange.
Balki walks back over to Larry, and now we find out all these boxes is all of Larry's childhood junk. from his house, shipped to him by his parents. And he pulls out his marbles, his slingshot. He pulls out a third-grade test paper. Who keeps this still? Do you have? Does our parents, mom have this?
This is like another little insight into Larry's character. We're still learning more and more about him, right? So not only is he neurotic and type A and all this,
He's a hoarder.
He keeps all his stuff.
Jeez, I'm sure his
He's
parents.
sentimental.
I'm sure his parents are so happy. She's got 8, 9 kids. I'm sure she was so happy. Get this crap out
rid
of
of
my
that
house.
stuff. Yeah.
So he's holding up the third-grade test paper. He goes, "Look, I got an A." And then Balki goes, "Oh," and then points out minus. Because he gets an A minus. As the kid was walking by and he was eating an apple core, and he's about to throw it into one of Larry's boxes things. And Larry's like, hey, that's not trash. The kid's like, looks like trash to me. And he does throw it out in another box of Larry's stuff. And then Balki finds an interesting artifact from Larry's youth. It's Larry's pogo stick. Right, and he pulls it out. And he goes, "What this? A crutch?"
What this?
And he tries to use it as a crutch. And Larry goes, "No, Balki, it's a pogo stick." Balki goes, "Well, of course it is. Don't be ridiculous. You got a pogo ball around here anywhere?" He looks around, and he's swinging the pogo stick like a bat.
That's a pretty logical guess.
Pretty good connection. Yes, if there's a stick, there's going to be a pogo ball. But that reference to pogo ball, as we'll get into momentarily, is also amazing.
But that's not what he was referencing.
No.
He was just referencing like a stick in a ball game.
He's trying to figure out what is this toy.
Yeah. So Larry, of course, starts to Larry-splain this childhood toy to Balki. He says, "This is the best toy in the world. I spent half my childhood on this thing."
Oh, yeah.
And he proceeds to, mount the pogo stick. He gets on it. And for those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, we'll explain in a moment. He gets on the pogo stick and he starts jumping on this thing up and down, which means he spent half his childhood just jumping up and down.
Yes, he spent half his childhood jumping up and down with an idiot smile on his face like he has.
Yeah, and this is the best part. Balki, who is normally so innocent and wide-eyed and excited about everything American, is just looking at him like completely unimpressed.
Yeah.
And he says, "What else does it do?" And Larry gets off and he says, "That's it. That's all." And Balki's like, "Guess you had to be there." And then Larry's like, "Look, I was just trying to share a part of my childhood."
Aww.
And Balki apologizes. And then he goes, "Did you pay money for this thing?"
All right, let's talk about the pogo stick for a second.
Yeah, tell us about a pogo stick.
Because this is funny, because this is an item that's even too old for us, beyond our reference. Like, it was old for him at his age. So, basically, if you've seen it, it's a spring stilt with a rod and 2 foot pedals and double handles that you balance. You jump up and down. It has a crazy history. The first spring stilt utilizing compression springs was patented in 1891, and then the modern, eponymously named pogo stick, invented by Max Pohlig and Ernest Gottschall from Germany.
I got it.
Pohlig
Pogo.
and Gottschall, exactly. A German patent for that registered March 1920 for a device they called a spring and hopping stilt. So that's where pogo comes from. And then the 2-handled pogo stick that he has, that design patented 1957. And in the 70s, it was the height of popularity, this dumb thing where you just jump up and down. Much like, a jump rope or a hula hoop. It's a repetitive thing. So, yeah.
But of course, by the time we were kids in the 80s, the pogo stick was not really popular anymore. But what was around,
there was something,
was an offshoot, a child of the pogo stick called the pogo ball.
Oh my God.
Now, 80s kids, if you remember this, write in and let us know who had a pogo ball. We had one.
We did. Now,
I had one.
What does it look like?
Okay, so those like balancing boards that like hipsters who have standing desks stand on now?
Yeah, like the half Bosu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a half Bosu. So yeah, it was kind of like a Bosu, except it had a bulby ball on either side of the balance board.
No, it's one ball. It's a ball squeezed through a plastic circle disc with a hole in it, right?
Okay, there you go. So imagine like Saturn, but the rings are squeezing the planet.
Yes, it looks like Saturn. That's very good. But it looks like Saturn's gained a little weight, and it's tight around the midsection. It's been eating too many burgers.
Fat Saturn.
It's Fat Saturn.
It's a Fat Saturn.
So, and you stand on the rings of Fat Saturn, squeeze your legs, and just hop up and down.
And you hop
like
up
an
and down. It
idiot
was a lot
in
of
the
fun,
sun.
actually.
It was. And then they had the pogo, the circle thing that swung around your foot. That was another pogo.
That's
option.
a jump. We had one of those.
That was something else.
That was called a
Skip it.
what was it? It was like a skip it or a jump it. That was like a jump rope variety, but with a thing that spun around your foot. Anyway,
but I guess that's jumping up and down will always be fun.
A lot of jumping when you're kids until your knees go bad.
That's what the pogo stick reminded me, of the pogo ball. Don't go on a trampoline in your 40s. I do not recommend it.
Nope.
So as they're Balki's insulting his pogo stick, the surly delivery dude brings in Larry's bike, Black Beauty, it's called. We should describe this bike. It's a pretty sweet bike.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's just shiny. It has tassels. It's the body of it is black with this stripe. It's just
like a cruiser bike. It's got a rear view mirror. It's got a basket.
Yeah, everything you ever wanted in a bike when you were a kid.
And Larry introduces Balki to Black Beauty. He says, Balki, meet Black Beauty. And Balki shakes the tassels hanging from the handle.
Like he's shaking his hand.
And Larry's like, man, they even did a wheelie once. He did a wheelie on Black Beauty. Meanwhile, the kid is at the counter now. And he goes, hey, if you're finished talking to the bicycle, can I buy this pen and get out of here? Little snarky kid.
So they leave the bike for a moment, and Balki and Larry go over the register, and Balki's like, oh, that's a very good choice, that pen. You're a very smart shopper. And Larry, meanwhile, circles around to the other side of the kid where he notices a price tag hanging out of the kid's coat pocket.
What's this?
And Larry's like, oh, and he's a very busy shopper, too. And he pulls out the item, which happens to be a pocket calculator, which I thought was funny because he pulled it out of his pocket, which is where you would think a pocket calculator goes.
Yeah.
And Larry's like, this runs $9.95. And Balki, being innocent, sweet Balki's like, oh, you're going to need batteries for that. And he goes to get the batteries. And Larry's like, no. Balki, he was stealing. And Balki is like, of course, Balki sees the best in everyone always.
Yeah.
He says, no, I'm sure he was going to pay for it and forgot. And the kid's like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that.
Can I go now? And Larry's like, no, I want your name and address so I can talk to your mother. And the kid takes off, but he leaves his school binder that he had walked in with on the counter.
Kids are dumb, that's why.
Right. So then Larry sees the school binder, which they call a notebook, and he opens it up and he's like, Eddie Harris.
Oh, we got his name.
The kid freezes in the doorway.
Eddie Harris.
So he's like, Eddie Harris. He opens it and he's like, 315 Lincoln Avenue. Oh, he lives in our building.
Whoa.
And then Balki has this great line. He goes, well, I'll be snookered. So do we. Because it's their building. Now, what do we know about this address, 315 Lincoln Avenue?
You know what? This was not the same address he gave to the guy at the DMV when they went to get the driver's license.
But that one was Lincoln Avenue, too.
Yes, which we know it's Lincoln Boulevard, and it doesn't go that low. But I believe in the driver's license episode, which actually will get referenced again later, he gave him a different address. I just think they keep changing the address every time they give an address, just because they don't care. I don't know.
Yeah, they mentioned different addresses because, again, it was 1987 and nobody
you couldn't check these
was
things.
watching these shows close enough together to pay attention.
Hey, I'm going to pull out my VHS tape from last season and double check what they think. No, nobody was
Unless
doing
you had a really great memory and were cross-referencing like we are the addresses in Chicago.
Nobody's doing it.
So Eddie is sweating now. He's like, look, I don't want any trouble. I just moved here. Please don't call my mother. And here, I'll make you a deal. You don't call my mother, I won't come into your store again. And Balki is convinced that Eddie is very sorry. And he convinces Larry to let him go with his notebook. And Larry's like, fine, don't let it happen again. And Eddie leaves. And then Larry's like, there's a tragedy. Larry's splaining. There's a tragedy you see 1,000 times in a big city. A kid starts out shoplifting, moves up to stealing hubcaps, then the whole car, then ends up in and out of prison and never has a shot at a decent life. Damn. Larry has just condemned this child's entire life.
He just ruined that kid's life in one fell swoop. No trust at all, Larry.
Nope. So Balki's like, oh, that's terrible. And then Larry continues explaining and musing. He's like, if only someone would take the time to point him in the right direction, this kid might have a chance. And then Balki has a light bulb moment and he says, we have the time.
They do.
And then Larry thinks about it. He says, okay, I suppose we could spend some time with him.
Aw.
I am good with kids because I had 8 siblings.
Yes, he does.
Balki says we can start helping him tomorrow because it's Saturday. And then Larry's like, well, we can start right now. And he holds out his hand. He's like, give me 25 cents. And Balki's like, why? He goes, well, we got to pay for the pen we just let him walk out with. And so the kid won in the end. He ended up stealing something after all.
He got a pen, not a calculator. Now, Sophia, listener, before we continue, I have
Speaking of pens and calculators.
Speaking of pens and magnets and calculators, we have a big announcement here.
What are we talking about?
Dance of Joy podcast now has merchandise.
We got merch.
We got shirts. We got mugs, hoodies, masks, all with the Dance of Joy logo, different colors.
So exciting because I, for one, have been waiting to spread the Dance of Joy love through merch.
We hope you're excited to pick some things up. Visit danceofjoypod.com/shop. It will take you to our TeePublic shop, and you can buy a bunch of stuff. And many of you already had. We posted this on social, Sophia. There was a couple of sales. Thank you so much for buying stuff. And if you have something fun, take a photo of yourself in the T-shirt with the mug. Love to share it and give you a shout out.
For sure. I ordered some stuff. I can't wait to post my picture, and that'll be a total fun thing. We'll be looking for your photos on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or wherever you're following us. Send us a picture with your merch. How exciting.
Get some swag, danceofjoypod.com/shop. Okay, so then it cuts to the next day at the apartment, and Balki and Larry are on the phone with Eddie's mom, and this is hilarious when you can hear one side of the conversation every time they do that because you learn so much. These lines are written so well.
Their telephones, the telephone is used so much on this show.
But it's used to such a great degree. So you see that all Larry's boxes are everywhere, and he's on the phone. He assures her, yes, we really do want to spend the day with your son, Mrs. Harris. And he goes, yes, I'll be sure to keep my hand on my wallet. And then he goes, I understand that it's my funeral, but I'm willing to take that chance. He says goodbye and hangs up and goes, interesting woman. He explains to Balki that he's starting to kind of figure out where Fast Eddie is coming from. That's what his mom calls her own son. She calls him Fast Eddie. Balki asks, why does she call him that? And Larry explains that it may be because Eddie is growing up too fast. He goes, he's been arrested twice for shoplifting, and she didn't go into it, but they can't go back to Florida.
Oh my gosh. Then they sit back on the couch between all these boxes of Larry's things, and Balki's like really moved by this. He says, that's the saddest story I've ever heard. Well, except for the woman I read about in the checkout line who had feet the size of watermelon.
Watermelon feet.
And then he just stares off. And so this is one thing about this episode in particular that I noticed. There are a lot of like random toss aside jokes that have nothing to do with the rest of the story.
Yeah,
like,
a lot of one-off kind of filler things. Yeah.
So Larry doesn't even respond to that joke. He just carries on.
He's like, we can't help her, Balki, but we can help Eddie.
And he says, we'll use the 3 Ps.
Oh.
Patience, perseverance, and pride.
Sounds like a good plan.
This is the first reference in this episode. This episode also contains a lot of alliteration and rule of threes.
Yeah.
Both of which we know are very common and effective tools of comedy and humor. But they're particularly pronounced. See what I did there? They're particularly pronounced in this episode. And there are some more instances that we will point out when we get to them.
P is a great letter to use. Patience, perseverance, and pride. And then Balki turns to Larry and he goes, I was thinking we could play Boochie Tag with him. And Larry goes, no Mypos games. No, we're not doing it. Balki goes, it's fun and easy to play. And at this point, I'm like, oh my God, what is Boochie Tag? What is this?
What is Boochie
Tag? So Larry says no again. And then Balki just taps Larry on the shoulder and says, you're it. And Larry goes, I'm not playing this game. And Balki says, you have to because you're it. And then he blinks at him and looks at him and he whispers, Boochie, boochie, boochie. Oh my God, this is so
Okay,
weird.
so the way he says "boochie, boochie, boochie" in this whole episode is so funny to me, and I think
It's so
part of
hilarious.
that is just the two actors trying not to laugh, because you see that Bronson Pinchot is doing that face control thing that he does when he's trying not to break, but every time he says "boochie, boochie, boochie," his face is
funny.
like wildly contorting, and it's so funny.
And then we learn more about Boochie Tag. He tells Larry that once a game of Boochie Tag starts, you have to play it until it's over.
But we don't know how it ends, so that's funny.
Yeah, there's no, what is the end? And Larry just goes, no, I don't have to, Larry says. And then Balki goes, okay, well, then in that case, you just have to be in forever. And then he taunts him again with another Boochie, Boochie, Boochie. Larry's like, whatever. And he gets up and he takes his boxes to the kitchen and turns around, steps behind. He goes, I'm not going to play this childish game. And then taps Balki back on the shoulder. And then Balki looks up and Larry smugly goes, you're it. And it's on now,
and then
people.
they do this like mutual recognition, excited face.
Full-on Boochie Tag is happening in the apartment, people. This is huge.
Okay, so this, of course, is our favorite physical comedy. Balki jumps up from the sofa and starts chasing Larry around the kitchen table. And they pause for a moment as they're facing off on either side of the kitchen table. And Larry looks at him and he just, like, with his wild Larry eyes, and he goes, Boochie, Boochie, Boochie.
Can I just tell you, the way Larry says Boochie, 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 it's like a serial killer. It bugs
Yeah.
me a little. There's something off about it.
He's pretty manic because manic Larry is all in.
He
Every
reminds
time
me
he's-
of Jack Nicholson from The Shining. Again, in this, it's like Boochie, Boochie, Boochie. I was like, oh my God, Larry Appleton.
Yes. And so then Balki climbs over the table to get to Larry and then chases him back toward the bedroom where Balki's finally able to tag Larry. And they immediately reverse the chase because he tagged Larry. Larry's
Doesn't he
it
tag
now.
him and go, Boochie? I thought I heard him say Boochie.
Does he
as
say
tagged.
Boochie? Okay.
I thought I heard that.
Well, okay. So then he says Boochie. Then they reverse the chase and Balki runs back into the living room where he ducks in front of the sofa and he does this army crawl on his elbows to the other side of the sofa, but Larry's on the other side waiting for him. When Balki looks back to see if Larry's following him, Larry pats him on the head from the front. Balki looks up and Larry goes, Boochie, Boochie, Boochie. And then he runs to the closet door where he's cornered. And then Balki closes in on him and Larry is like joyfully laughing to
It's
the
so
point
funny.
of
It's so
tears.
strange.
Like a child, and I almost think that this is one of those scenes they did in one take, and so it's actually
That's real.
Markman Baker
Yeah,
laughing.
Yes, no, it's
So he's
absolutely
like
real.
joyful laugh,
Like
yeah.
giddily, like when you lose control and you're just like,
Real laughter.
it was just strange. I was like, that's him really laughing.
And then Balki tags him, and they're like both laughing together. And then so they break out of the game for a minute, and they do that unison laugh into unison sigh, where they're like, ha, 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 ha. And then the audience applauds, and it's all good fun.
Larry starts to walk away, saying, Balki won, and then he tags him on the arm again and goes, Boochie, Boochie, Boochie. Like he's gonna kill him. I can totally see like a serial killer movie where the guy, if you hear him say Boochie 3 times, he's gonna kill you. And then Balki starts towards him, and Larry gets backed up into a kitchen table where he's stopped again. And then this is some great timing. Balki tries tagging Larry and lunges to him on the right, but Larry dodges left. Balki then tries lunging on the left. Larry dodges again. He's very quick.
Okay, wait. This is more than a dodge, though. What I thought when I saw this scene is that this looked like a cartoon to me.
Yeah.
Because it's not a dodge. It's like his whole body like curves out of the way,
Yeah.
like in a cartoon. So it was very, very comical and cartoonish.
A lot like
as
in the
this
gym.
show often is. Yeah.
Remember in the gym when he was lunging for him and Balki makes a nice curve. So
Yes.
they're so great. And then Balki pulls the old, hey, what's that on your shirt gag? Where you point down and Larry looks up and he taps him and he's hit. He goes, Boochie, Boochie, Boochie. I can't believe Larry, after all that, Larry falls for that, hey, what's that on your shirt gag? That was great.
So the game continues. Balki runs. So he's just tagged Larry.
Boochie,
He runs away from
Boochie,
Larry. He
Boochie.
turns the corner around the sofa. He picks up Dimitri from the coffee table.
Dimitri.
And he's grabbing Dimitri, and Larry tags Balki excitedly. He says, "You're it." And Balki's like, "No, I'm not."
No, I'm not.
And Larry's like, "Yes, you are. I just tagged you." And Balki's like, "Yes, I know, but I'm not it." And Larry's like, "Why not?" And Balki goes, because I'm holding the Bucci.
Oh, my
and
God,
He holds
what?
up Dimitri. And at this point, he's like, cannot help himself. He's like laughing as he's delivering these lines.
He looks away as he holds up Dimitri. Like he
And he's
can't even look at him in the
Did
face.
I mention that Dimitri was the Bucci?
What rules? There's a Bucci. You can
And
hold
Larry's
the Bucci.
like, you made that up. And Balki's like, well, I guess you'll just have to go to Mypos to find out. And then he slaps the leg again.
So that's like the glue. Remember there's glue in
The glue,
tag?
yeah.
I'm holding
The safe.
Bucci. The safe
Bucci
zone.
is the safe.
Bucci. Fantastic Myposian version of tag. I love it when the game is interrupted by a knock on the door, and then they both look at each other and they go, Eddie. In
And the
unison.
game is just over at that point.
No more Bucci tag. And they walk over and they open the door, and it's Eddie. And you'll notice Larry's bike, Black Beauty, is sitting in the hallway. I guess that's where he decided to store it, Appleton. Okay, that's a public space, Larry. It's not your hallway.
It's 1987.
Picking
Things
up-
were
putting up-
innocent.
Okay, so the bike's out there. Eddie comes in and he's all annoyed. He goes, my mom told me I had to come down here to have fun, so let's get this over with. And Larry's like, look, we're going to have a great time. What do you feel about pottery? And he's like, what? Larry goes, we're going to have a great time. With our first stop will be the museum, or we could go on a walking tour of the major architectural sites downtown. And Eddie's like, I'm out of here. And he starts to leave, and Balki grabs him and goes, or we could play video games until our eyes fall out and then eat hot dogs until we bust a gut. And Eddie likes this idea, and he's in, and they're all going to hang out, which is very nice of them to spend time with this poor youth.
Right. It then cuts to the next scene, which is the next morning. And their cousins are having breakfast at the table. Now, a little side note, Larry is back in his favorite mint green ensembles again. He's in a mint green collared shirt and a mint green sweater.
He's like a walking mint you would eat. He's so bright.
Yeah. He's a winter green.
He's a walking winter green lifesavers.
So this is now a scene that I think carries on the plot, but also has a random side joke that doesn't really fit. So Balki sits down. Larry's eating a bowl of cereal. There's the cereal box is on the table, and Balki sits down, and there's two bowls in front of Balki. He picks up the cereal box. The cereal, by the way, is just called Puffs.
Puffs.
Just Puffs. And he empties out the cereal in the bowls in front of him, like empties the whole box out, and he's looking through it with a spoon. Meanwhile, Larry says how much fun they had with Eddie the day before, and Balki says he thinks Eddie had a good time as well since he saw him smile twice.
2 times.
And so Balki, again, has poured the cereal into one of the 3 bowls in front of him, and he's like, sorting through the cereal, and Larry goes on to say, oh, remember that Eddie thanked us after we bought him the 12th hot dog?
Well, it's a lot of hot dogs.
Yeah, they did buy him a lot of hot dogs. And then Larry says, I think we have a gift for working with kids. And Balki's like, yeah. And then he's like looking through the cereal with his spoon, and he's looking through Larry's cereal in Larry's bowl with the spoon. And then finally Larry's like, Balki, what are you doing? And Balki's like, looking for those Monster Man tattoos.
Oh.
And then Larry holds them up. He's already found them in the cereal box. And Balki looks hurt. And then Larry hands them over to him. And then Balki looks happy and childlike again. And Larry goes, maybe we should give those to Eddie. And Balki goes, I don't think so.
I don't think so. So that was all just a bit to get tattoos out of the box.
It seemed very random. Yeah.
Well, at that point, Larry gets up from the table, getting to the door, commenting he goes, Eddie isn't such a bad kid. He steps outside to the apartment to get the paper, and he's like, his mom just has to have more patience with her son until he stops, turns around, realizing the hall outside is empty, and he looks back again, comes inside, and goes, Balki goes, what's wrong? And Larry goes, Black Beauty is gone. That rotten kid stole my bike. And so,
oh, man, they went from praising this kid and being
just
proud of themselves.
instantly turning on him.
And by the way, when Larry goes into the hallway, his sweater ensemble is very matchy with the rest of the hallway, the walls and stuff. He almost blends.
He's like a ninja in there.
So that takes us to Act 2. Larry is fuming. He wants to go upstairs to Eddie's apartment to get his bike back, to get Black Beauty back. Balki is not so convinced, and he calls out Larry. He says, how can you be so sure that it was Eddie who took the bicycle? And Larry's like, Eddie's the only thief who lives in this building.
Balki is so innocent and trusting, and
Balki loves everybody, wants to see the good in everybody, right?
Does.
So then Balki's like, okay, maybe he took it, but just to borrow it. And then Larry asks Balki if he has, he's like, why would Eddie borrow his bike? And Balki says that if you want to help someone, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Doubt?
And Larry goes, doubt? And Balki goes, doubt. This is awesome. It's a rule of, it's a three-P quick exchange that you have to give them the benefit of the doubt, and trust them. And then they just move on as if it's like no joke at all.
Well, doubt is such a weird word. Why is the P in there?
Doubt. Yeah. So Balki's like, you got to trust them. And then Larry's like, Balki, his own mother doesn't trust him. The entire state of Florida doesn't trust him. 11 million people can't be wrong. Okay. Can we stop and talk about this line for a second? This line was written in 1987. Little did the sitcom writers know in 1987 how wrong the entire state of Florida can, in fact, be.
At Florida Man, I'm looking at you.
Elections, Florida Man, everything. The future had changed for people's trust in Florida.
Yeah, I guess Florida had a reputation in 1987.
So, in 1987, the line was
interesting.
11 million people can't be wrong. I just thought that was a little funny to hear today.
So the ironing is delicious.
The ironing
as Bart
is
Simpson
delicious.
would say.
So anyway, Larry goes to the door. Balki's like, Eddie's going to be here in a minute, and I want you to promise that we'll give him a chance. And then Balki reminds Larry of the 3 Ps: patience, perseverance, and pride.
That's
Again,
right.
we get the alliteration. But then Larry turns it back to him and says, Balki, when it comes to Eddie, the only 3 Ps are police, prosecution, and prison. Another 3 Ps. Lots of fun alliteration.
I love that.
Rule of 3s.
I love that callback, and then I love his inversion of, he's changing it. And then I just love the police, prosecution, and prison. The way he pronounces prison. Prison.
Police, prosecution, prison.
Oh, the rhythm is great, and the alliteration's great.
And then Balki, actually being the immigrant, reminds Larry that this is America, and every man is innocent until proven guilty. And we haven't even heard his side of the story yet, so he makes Larry promise that he will keep an open mind, and Larry says, no, I don't have to promise anything. Wow. And he walks away.
And then we get another great physical comedy bit, and something Balki does often to Larry. Balki calmly walks up just to the left of Larry and reaches his arm across Larry. Balki's on his right? And
they're both facing forward, standing shoulder to shoulder.
He reaches his arm across Larry, grabs Larry's left forearm, and asks him again to promise that you will keep an open mind. Larry says no. At that point, Balki reaches down, grabs his legs, lifts and spins Larry upside down, flips him, and now he's holding him at an angle upside down.
Yeah, and Mark Lynn-Baker is keeping a very stiff as a board body for this bit to work.
He's doing the whole mannequin body because you have to do that. And Larry still refuses to promise. So Balki goes, I'm going to hold you here until your hair falls out. And Larry finally promises. He's like, okay.
All right.
Balki sets him down again, but I just love it. Just puts his arm across.
Like a random little thing that I'm sure they thought of and were like, where can we put this in? I want to just flip you and hold you upside down.
And flip you around. It's fantastic.
It was so smooth, though. It was so smooth.
And you're not expecting him to do that. You're like, what is he doing? And then he just flips him upside down. It's great.
So he puts him back down, and then there's a knock at the door, and it's Eddie, and he's like, you guys ready to go? And Larry, who had just promised to keep an open mind, was like, you're not going anywhere, punk. And Eddie's like, what? I thought we were going to the movies. And then Balki explains to Eddie that Cousin Larry is upset because his bike is missing. And Eddie's like, I don't know anything about your bike. And Balki's like, see? And then Larry doesn't buy any of it. He's like, then what's he doing with this? And Eddie had been playing with something in his hand. Larry grabs it and he says, it's one of Black Beauty's streamer strands. Again,
more alliteration.
Two alliterations, right? Back to back. Black Beauty's streamer strands. And Eddie's like, no, I found this in the hall. Larry doesn't believe it. Oh, yeah? Tell me another. And he turns around and he goes, I want my bike back, you freckle-faced felon.
I love that.
More alliteration, and here we even have a three for a freckle-faced felon.
He sounds like he's channeling like Mel Blanc. Like it sounds like Daffy the Duck saying, I want my bike back, you freckle-faced felon.
That's exactly how he says it,
F,
too.
yeah, so now you're using the F with the alliteration. It's so good.
So Balki calls Eddie over to him, and he asks him point blank if he took Cousin Larry's bike. And Eddie looks him straight in the eye and says, I did not take it. And Balki believes him, but Larry, again, he's unconvinced. He's already made up his mind. And he tells Balki that he's not seeing Eddie for what he really is. And then he like goes off on this rant. And he goes, Eddie, do me a favor. When you take his wallet, leave his driver's license. It means a lot to him.
There's the callback to the driver's license episode. Remember how important it was for him to get the driver's license? Yeah,
very important. So then Eddie's like, I'm done with this. And he says, I don't need this from you. I get enough of this garbage from home.
Oh, my God.
He yells and he walks out. How heartbreaking.
I felt bad for Eddie, but Larry is not giving him a chance.
Right.
So Balki shuts the door, and Larry grabs the phone, and he announces, I'm calling Eddie's mother. But Balki doesn't want him to. He's worried he's going to get Eddie in trouble. And Larry goes, don't worry about Eddie. I'm sure he'll continue a life of crime someday, write a best-selling book. And Balki's repeatedly, so Larry keeps dialing the number, and Balki hangs up the phone by pressing the hang up button. So Larry has to keep redialing the number. He asks Larry why he can't trust and believe the boy. And Larry goes, trust Eddie? Believe Eddie? Fine. And then he slams the receiver down onto Balki's finger.
Ow. Okay, some listeners might not understand that line either.
Slamming
the receiver down on someone's finger.
That. Well, we
don't slam phone receivers down anymore because we don't have phone receivers like that.
Well, in offices, you still have phone receivers in like office situations.
Oh, yeah, okay, we do, yeah.
But, like at home, you can't, there was such a satisfaction in doing that too.
But
and
I mean, as of the last year, we don't have offices anymore.
That's
either.
also true. Just another thing we have been robbed of is the satisfaction of slamming the phone down on somebody.
Exactly.
You can't do that anymore.
Anyway, small aside on phone receivers.
So Larry is just freaking out. He goes, why don't we invite him down here to steal whatever his little heart desires? No, why stop at Eddie? He says. He grabs Balki's fingers and squeezes them to emphasize the statement, and they hurt. He goes, why not invite every thief in the city? He runs over to the window, flings it open, leans out. He's just lost it. He goes, hey, everybody, we got a new stereo. Anybody want to steal it? Help yourself. It's bargain day at Larry and Balki's Rip-Off City.
Yeah, Larry is losing his mind here. He's out of control. He's yelling out the window. What is going on? Why is he so upset? Anyway, it's just
Imagine
Larry
walking
being Larry.
by and you hear just some crazy guy yelling, what's going on? Balki scolds Larry. He walks over and he shuts the window. And then Larry jumps back in pain, holding his hand, which he was doing to Balki, close the window on his pain. Balki's concerned. He goes, I'm sorry. And then Larry goes, gotcha. And pretended that his fingers
Which
got
was
stabbed.
also, to me, like a random joke in this.
It was so weird. Like, it seemed even more mean in this whole thing.
Gotcha.
Not only is he putting Balki through this, but now he's messing with him for no reason.
Yeah, that part didn't really fit in with the rest of the... There are a couple things in this episode that I found were, like, not completely fitting in, but...
I think it was just Larry is losing it because Balki pulls Larry over to the couch and goes, you seem troubled. And then Larry's like, oh, do you think so? He asked sarcastically. And then Balki's like, yes, I can tell because that vein on your neck is popping out and your upper lip has disappeared altogether. Which I appreciate the no lip joke because sometimes it's so distracting that Mark Baker has no lips. I can't enjoy the show.
So then Larry insists on calling Eddie's mother and he heads for the kitchen phone this time. And Balki wants to stop. He's like, no, cousin, no. But then there's a knock at the door, and then Balki is like torn. Do I open the door? Do I stop Larry? And Larry already has Eddie's mother on the phone, but then there's a knock at the door again. So Balki runs to the door. He opens the door. Larry's on the phone already. Balki opens the door, and it's Jennifer and Marianne, and Jennifer has Larry's bike.
Oh, Black Beauty's there.
And Balki's like, Black Beauty, your bike, cousin Larry, your bike. And he wheels it into the apartment and Larry sees it. And then he says to Eddie's mom, I'll have to call you back. And he hangs up. Larry runs over to them excitedly saying, Jennifer, Black Beauty. And then Marianne goes, oh, thank you. I've been working on my tan. Okay, I'm not going to make any comment on this line. May or may not be problematic in current times.
She thought he was talking to her, Black Beauty. Oh,
which is also funny because she's like very white and very blonde.
God, she is even, Jennifer is the tan one. That is what's hilarious.
So we learn now that it turns out that Jennifer had borrowed the bike from the hallway.
The bike. Gotcha.
And now Larry feels like a big dummy, but Jennifer tells him that her car was in the garage and she needed to go pick it up and it was early and she didn't want to bother him, so she just took the bike. And Larry's like, oh, of course, Larry, wanting to impress Jennifer all the time, says, oh, it's no bother. I didn't miss it at all. And Balki's like, didn't miss it at all? You were threatening a child and yelling out the window. And Jennifer was like, oh, my God, was that you?
She heard him.
So then Larry has to explain it was his childhood bike and he's kind of attached to it. And then Marianne has this brilliant line. She's like, Jennifer, we better go. I think it's obvious that Larry's suffering from severe separation anxiety caused by the temporary loss of his childhood bicycle.
What are we talking about?
What?
And then everyone, of course, is speechless again because it's one of these Marianne moments of clarity.
Another Marianne moment of clarity. I love it.
And Jennifer's like, Marianne, where do you learn this stuff? And she just goes, I watch Oprah. And then they leave.
So late at night, Marianne sometimes makes sense. And then sometimes Oprah just comes through.
I don't think we need to explain what Oprah is. People know Oprah show. It's also no longer on the air. But
Oprah's still a thing.
Oprah's still a thing.
Interviewed the royal people.
The royal family.
Oh,
but
boy.
Anyway. So the girls leave. And there is awkward silence between the cousins because Larry's feeling dumb.
He's an idiot.
And Balki's got this I told you so kind of air
just
about
staring up into looking at the ceiling, just looking. And Larry tries to break the awkward silence. He honks the horn of the bike to break the tension. He's like, I got my bike back. And Bucky's like, yeah, you did. And he goes, it wasn't stolen. And Bucky goes, no. And Larry's like, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that I didn't give Eddie a chance. Balki's like, what? And he's like, elaborate. He doesn't think like pull it, stretch it out a little more. And Larry goes, and you're disappointed in me because when the going got tough, I gave up on him. And Balki's like, a little bit more. And I owe you an apology. And the Balki goes, no. And gets up and walks away and goes to the phone. And Larry's like, no, but I owe somebody an apology, don't I? Yes, you do, Larry Appleton. Jeez. You made that kid feel so bad, and it wasn't him. How dare you?
Yes, and all you wanted to do was help this kid in the first place.
You had good intentions. Listener, before we complete Act 3 and the whole show here, want to let you know, if you are enjoying Dance of Joy, if we made you laugh, if we made you think about your childhood and reminisce, there's a way you can support the show.
If you laughed at the words Fat Saturn.
Fat Saturn is a good one.
Fat Saturn. Come on. You got to have at least a little chuckle at Fat Saturn.
If you're going boochie along with us, you love Dance of Joy, and you can help ensure this show keeps going. Visit our website, buy us a coffee, leave us a little tip. Go to danceofjoypod.com/support, or you can leave us a one-time or an ongoing donation, and it helps keep the show going, and we'd love to get your support.
It also helps us drink coffee and have energy while we record this show.
Which we do, because there's one more act left, Act 3.
Act 3 shows Balki and Larry are polishing Black Beauty in the living room of the apartment when there is a knock on the door, and it's Eddie. And Eddie comes in, boy. and he's pissed. And he is not happy.
It's going to be awkward.
He's like, my mom said I had to come down here. What do you want? And Eddie sees the bike and he's like, you got your bike back. Did you dust it for my fingerprints? As any typical kid at that age would say. And Larry admits to him that he knows he didn't take it. And Larry says, I'm the one who's guilty. And Eddie goes, you stole your own bike? What a lame-o. And Larry, of course, is like, no, I'm guilty of accusing you falsely. And he apologizes. And Eddie sort of smiles a little bit, but then he's like, can I go now? And Larry says, no, there's just one more thing I want to talk to you about, and it's the bike. And he says, I don't have time to ride it. It'll only gather dust, so I thought I would give it to someone who could use it. Are you interested?
Oh, my God.
And then Eddie is like touched. He's like, you're giving me your bike? And Larry says, yeah, and I hope it gives you as many nice memories as it gave me. And then Eddie is like super confused. He walks over to Balki and he's like, I don't get this guy. And Balki goes, sometimes I don't either. He's very complex. But inside that little man beats a heart as big as a liver.
Wait, so that's a messed up line. Big as a river, right? That's the saying.
Is it? I just thought he was comparing two organs.
Well, he is comparing two organs, but
the
you
liver
say
bigger than a heart as big as a river? I've never heard that.
Is that not a saying? I thought he messed up a saying. All right. Well, Eddie admits he's never had a bike before, and he promises to take good care of it. It's so sweet that they're giving it to him. But he goes, could you do me one favor, though? He goes, could you tell my mom you gave it to me so she doesn't think I stole it? There he goes, sure. And then he goes, what are you going to call it? And he goes, I'm going to call it my bike.
My bike.
And for some reason, the audience love that and applause that. It's like, it's kind of sad. I feel bad for Eddie. He's going to bring this bike home. And his mom is like,
mom's going to think he stole it.
Oh, my God. Do I got to call the police again? You return it. And Larry's like, no, Mr. Harris. Oh, you can have it.
So Eddie takes the bike and he leaves. And Balki says to Larry that was a very nice thing he did. And Larry just sighs and he's like, big deal. I gave him a bike, but I also called him a thief and a freckle-faced felon.
Freckle-faced felon.
And then Larry kind of laments about himself. He says, I thought I was good with kids, but I really messed up this one. And Balki, of course, is there to support him. He's like, that's not true. You made a very good start with him. Then something bad happened, and then you lost your mind.
Yeah, that's
so it's like
much,
almost a compliment again, but not quite.
Almost there, Larry
Then
Appleton.
we hear the music that we know,
what
which
does it mean?
means it's lesson time.
Lesson time. Balki says that Larry pointed Eddie in the right direction, and that if he follows Larry's example, someday he'll be as good a man as Larry is. And then Larry goes, well, I think maybe he should aim higher. Larry says, self-deprecating humor to the end. And Balki goes, this Mypia thinks it's pretty high. Balki says proudly. And then he goes, he knows how to cheer up Larry. He goes, we could play a game of boochie tag. And Larry goes, doesn't want to play boochie tag. And then Balki taps Larry on the shoulder and gives him the old boochie face and starts to run. But Larry just stands there, not making any move. Balki pauses and turns to look back at him. And then suddenly Larry snaps like in a horror movie and
he starts chasing Balki.
Lunges for Balki, and it freezes.
You know what's great about this freeze? So he just turns and starts to chase Balki, and they're both in action, and it freezes. And again, like my very first comment, you can see their hair. They're in this freeze frame. Their hair is in motion, both of them, because they have so much of it in this episode. So it's a great freeze frame. Best freeze frame so far. And roll credits.
Wow. So I think one of the big takeaways is we learned a new Myposian game called Boochie Tag.
All right, let's talk about Boochie Tag. What do we know as the rules of Boochie Tag? You tag someone, you taunt them with a Boochie, and then it's regular tag. You chase until you get tagged, and then there's a safety, which is a Boochie, which is an item, which in today's game was Dimitri.
Dimitri was the Boochie, and it also means when he said when you start a game it never ends, they're still playing Boochie Tag technically from now on.
He said you have to play until it's over, but we don't know what ends the game. That's the rule we're missing.
It's never over, and I submit that from this episode now they are always playing Boochie Tag.
They're always playing Boochie Tag. Maybe that's
does it come back?
That's like an ongoing game.
Boochie Tag is always active, and in between things they're just like Boochie.
Now, do you remember all the variations of tag we played when we were kids?
That's what it made me think of, was all the weird rules you'd make up as a kid when you have games. I remember freeze tag.
Freeze tag. There was like a dance. How did freeze tag work?
I was just going to ask you that. So if you got tagged, you had to freeze, and then someone else playing who had not been tagged had to unfreeze you.
Something like that, yeah. I don't remember freeze tag.
There was one I remember, and I was trying to remember how it was played, but I remember we called it TV tag. TV tag? Yeah, had to do with like at some point you would yell out like a TV show or something. I don't remember what the rules were, but I remember some form of entertainment was involved.
Okay, maybe
TV
listeners, if you were big tag players and if you had a lot of variations of tag, write in, let us know, leave us a message with remind us what all the versions of tag were as a kid. And did you also know that there's like world tag competitions?
Oh yeah, there was a game show on TV. It was like it was a tag game that looked like American Gladiator, but they were in this arena and there was taggers and there was rules. You had to go in.
Like
I watched that, dude. That was fun.
Yeah. So maybe Bucci Tag could be a world.
Oh, can you remember like high-end ESPN shows Bucci Tag with the Myposians? That'd be hilarious. The other comment I had is that apartment. This is a pretty spacious apartment, right?
Yeah.
Sophia? There's a lot of room. We see there's a lot of empty space.
There's enough room to run around and play Bucci Tag.
I would think there would be enough room to store a bicycle inside and not in the hallway unlocked Larry Appleton.
Now, listen. Now, I know it was 1987 and it was a much more innocent time and people were much more trusting. But at the same time, we're in Chicago here, the big city. You don't just leave your things in the hallway.
I would tell you, historically, growing up in Chicago as a kid, like we grew up in the city, went to the suburbs, whatever.
Yeah.
I've had several bikes stolen.
Yeah. Even from inside the house.
Yes,
even from inside the garage.
When we were kids and when I'm an adult, I'm riding around Chicago here. Even when you lock the bike up, we come out and the bike's gone. It's just I've had several bikes.
Larry's just leaving Black Beauty, his sentimental childhood bike, in the hallway.
That bike would fetch a nice price on this black market. You know, there is a bike black market like in Chicago, probably other big cities.
Yeah.
Yeah, where all the stolen bikes go. They buy and sell stolen bikes, and
okay. That's just a little weird, but it works for the plot of the episode. Some interesting facts about this episode. This is the first time Balki says, well, I'll be snookered, but I think we're going to hear that again. And
does he mean the game?
Of a catchphrase?
Like
I think so. I think that's where snookered comes from. Yeah.
I'll be snookered. Bucci Tag does come back. Eventually, we're going to see it in the 6th season.
Yeah.
And then again in the final season. So it doesn't come back for a while.
Okay.
And it's played with some hilarious situations, which we'll get to when we get there.
Much later. We'll get there eventually.
But I think a lot of Perfect Strangers fans, they greet each other going, Bucci, Bucci, Bucci. Bucci, Bucci. And then you just start playing tag randomly.
And we already mentioned this callback. Larry mentions to Eddie that Balki's driver's license means a lot to him. So that was a callback to the first season episode where Balki gets his driver's license and it's a big deal for his Americanness.
Speaking of Eddie, let's talk about Eddie Harris, played by Bobby Jacoby, which is an acting name. He's also known as Robert Jane.
Okay.
Is that confusing at all? What's his name?
Little bit. Lots of names.
Bobby Jacoby is his mostly credited name. And I recognize this kid from watching sitcoms back in the day. He comes from a family of actors, and he was in tons of 80s and 90s sitcoms, Sophia.
Yeah, like the classic ones that all kids in this generation who were on TV were in. So it's just a few of them. He made appearances on Different Strokes, Webster, Cagney and Lacey, Who's the Boss, Small Wonder, The Wonder Years, Charles in Charge, Boy Meets World, and a number of other shows that were not sitcoms, but that were big shows in that era.
I totally remember this kid. He was also in the movies Can't Hardly Wait, Pearl Harbor, and Tremors.
Yeah, and fun fact, this actor won the 1988 Young Artist Award for his performance as Eddie Harris in this
Eddie
episode.
Harris won an award for Eddie for being Eddie Harris. Yeah, he's good. He's good.
Nice.
I totally remember seeing this kid in all those shows you mentioned. So it's fun to see these kids pop up.
And despite the fact that Eddie Harris lives in the same building as Larry and Balki, we will not see him again.
Oh, he's a one and done, is he? Well, he's
Maybe
a little
he moved
thief
back
anyways.
to Florida.
I don't trust that kid. Good riddance. He can't go back to Florida. He's got to pick a different state.
We have some fun,
speaking
Dimitri.
of Florida, you don't want to go to Florida. That's all. Sorry, go ahead.
We have some fun Dimitri appearances in this episode. Dimitri is a very big character in this episode.
Very prominent.
For one, in the beginning, he's just sitting being Dimitri on the end table by the couch. Then, of course, we find out that he's the Bucci, and
He's the
Balki picks
Bucci.
him up to keep himself safe.
Yes, but I'm not it.
And then later, when Larry is losing his mind and yelling out the window, inviting thieves up to steal their things, we see Dimitri by the window in front of this like recorder thing, reel-to-reel recorder thing. And Dimitri's got a blindfold and a cigarette in his mouth.
Yeah.
And there's a little cannon that's pointing at him, which I think is to signify that Eddie is being falsely accused and condemned
Oh, it's like the
by a
firing
manic
line.
Larry.
Yes,
Yeah, like a
Larry's-
firing squad.
Yeah, Larry's to
Which
hit.
is a neat little detail. Yeah.
That is so interesting. That's a really deep, like, metaphor one. Somebody had to be like, let's put Dimitri as a firing
To me,
squad.
that seems like the funnest part about writing for this show is like trying to figure out how they're going to dress Dimitri or place Dimitri in the
That's
background.
such a crazy, like,
So
decision
fun.
to do that. I
Yeah.
love that. We had a couple of good Balki-isms. Did you look up that line? But inside that little man beats us a heart as big as a liver. What's the real line?
So big as a river is not a phrase.
It's not a thing. I made that up. I'm an idiot.
You made that up. Big River, however, was a Johnny
Oh.
Cash song.
Big River that's a great song. It's a great Johnny Cash song.
I think it's just
He's comparing organs. His heart is as big as his liver.
What is the phrase? You do say your heart is as big as something, but
It's his heart as big as a... I thought it was river. Listener, if you've ever
as big
heard
as
this
gold,
phrase...
as big as the ocean.
Ocean and river. Listener, if you heard this phrase, let me know I'm not crazy, because
No,
now I'm not
I
sure
think-
anymore.
I think it was just like, oh, it's a heart, but a liver is much bigger inside a body. So he's saying
Okay.
the heart is bigger than the liver. I don't know what's big inside my body, but okay. So then we have "Don't be ridiculous" was said twice. Also, we have "Where do I come up with them?" Well, I'll be snookered, and one of my favorites. I don't think so.
I don't think so. Balki laughs at his own joke, which he does often. Balki and Larry sigh in unison. Balki sulks and is sad until he gets something he wants. The joke about Larry's upper lip or lack of, my favorite little thing that he did, his upper lip is gone entirely altogether.
And a Marianne moment of clarity.
Yes, a Mary Ann moment of clarity, and this time it's care of Oprah, and not just because it's late at night and her synapses are firing different. Causing the wires up here,
No,
they don't connect.
They don't connect. What the big deal is. Now we have Perfect Strangers Today, my favorite segment of our show, in which we discuss if this story were to happen today, how would things be different? And we've already hit on one big one, like who leaves a bike in a hallway outside your apartment? That would not happen today. It shouldn't have even been happening then.
And you got those bikes where the front wheel pops off. You got these kryptonite
And you would have
locks.
like, we've talked about this before, you'd have like door cams and ring cams and stuff in the hallway.
That was just irresponsible of Larry, and serves him right they should have got stolen.
But also serves to make a nice story in the sitcom. Okay, another big one for Perfect Strangers Today that was just, it was in my head the whole time I was watching this episode, is today, if two 20-something men, they're supposed to be like 24, 25 years old.
Yeah.
If two 25-year-old dudes called up a woman and said, we want to hang out with your child, like she would call the police. Like that.
Yeah,
That is not something anyone is allowed to do anymore, and perhaps never should have been allowed to do. If they wanted to mentor young people, they would have to go through like an organized program or an organization that would put them through some vetting and vouch for them to the parents so that they could trust these. But they wouldn't just randomly call up like a mother and be like, yeah, we want to hang out with your son.
Right. Like there's Big Brother programs like
Yes,
the Boys and
but
Girls
like,
Club and
they don't
stuff.
happen through independent connections. Maybe
However-
if people know each other, if they're related, but these were strangers that just called up a woman and were like, we want to
Can we
want to
hang out with
mentor your son.
But that makes me think that little
So
Eddie
sketchy.
Harris, fast Eddie Harris, was such a handful, and his mother is so exasperated. Like, I feel bad for Mrs. Harris. This kid, maybe he's not a handful, and she's just giving him a hard time. Maybe he is. But for her to even consider right away, Well, she tried to talk him out of it. She's like, "It's your funeral. Are you sure you want this kid to come
but
down?"
she should have, like, if this was today, she'd be like, not talking them out of it. She'd be like, "You guys are super sketchy."
I'm gonna call the police while I keep you.
I don't know you. What do you want to hang out with my kid?
The phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the neighbors,
or like
they moved
check
into
a
the
registry for their names or something.
That's probably something that you would do. Yes.
So that's what would happen today and should have been happening then as well. But again, it's a sitcom. We suspend our belief for the sake of the story. Another thing we already touched on is this line about Florida that would not have been written in such a way today. 11 million people can't be wrong. The entire state of Florida.
It's like prophetic.
Only that was still true. And the other thing I wondered is, I don't know, I haven't eaten cereal from a box in a long time, but
me neither.
Are there still prizes in children's cereal, and are kids still excited about prizes? I don't have kids, so I don't know, but if anyone's out there and you know the answer to this, let us know. Are kids still excited? I imagine if there are prizes or little tattoos or whatever, there might still be in there for promotion, but I imagine that kids aren't excited about this stuff anymore because there's so much other stuff like Minecraft and whatnot to be excited about.
I remember back when we were kids, I saved cereal box tops and I ordered
to send them in.
Yeah, and I got a Gizmo doll. Remember the Gizmo doll?
Yeah, I remember that Gizmo doll.
Yeah.
And I loved all the prizes in the boxes.
But really, what plastic thing in a cereal box can be possibly of any worth to any kid these days?
But
that
tattoos,
have
I mean, the tattoos are always
fun.
cool.
Yeah. I feel like they might still be in kids' cereals. I don't know.
Maybe we should go shopping, and that's our homework for next week. Buy some
question.
Cereal, kids' cereal in boxes. I do remember eating cereal a lot, and reading the backs of the boxes, like there were often puzzles and
that was always fun, little mazes or things,
you know, because we didn't have phones to keep us busy then. We didn't have electronics, so I would just eat cereal and do the puzzles and the mazes. Of the box.
Absolutely.
Little jokes and things, rebuses on the backs of cereal boxes. Okay.
Now we have let's finish up with a very special.
This is so exciting, you guys.
Shout out segment. Sophia, I'm going to let you explain this whole thing that ends with possibly an exciting new segment for the show.
We are so excited. This is the first time we're talking about this. So today's shout outs is a very special shout out. We're going to have actually 2 shout outs to the same listener, the same fan. We got a message on Instagram from another Instagram account that is called us. Oh yeah, we got tagged by another Instagram account that is called Balki Duds, BALKIDUDS.
Yes.
And this account is an Instagram account dedicated to Balki's outfits on the show. And I'm not going to say anything more because we're going to hear more about that account in a minute.
So we mentioned our merchandise that we just
had posted. Right, we had posted about our new merch just yesterday. Yes. And this account tagged us, and I'm just going to read this message in the way that I heard it as I was in my head as I was reading it, because it's so joyful and it's so lovely. So this is what Balki Duds wrote. Okay, this is going to take a little context. Sometimes you're just Googling, you know, and then somehow you end up reading an old interview with Bronson Pinchot's brother, Justin, and you see it's from perfectstrangers.tv, which is apparently a whole website. And then you go to the Facebook page for it, and then you see a post about a podcast about rewatching Perfect Strangers. And you think about posting about it, but it's not really a Balki Dud, you know, but they have a t-shirt about the podcast about Perfect Strangers, and the prophecy has been fulfilled. What even is reality? Check out at Dance of Joy Pod, who we are going to demand become our new best friends, for links and to get yourself one of these shirts. What?
Wow.
What are we talking about?
Amazing. What
Best
even is reality?
Instagram post ever.
Sometimes the internet is a weird and wonderful place, sister. It's not all doom and gloom.
Balki Duds, you know, if you're out there and listening, and I think you are, Balki Duds, listen, this is a pandemic. We've been home for a year now. My brother and I started this show as a fun thing to do, and we're having tons of fun. And receiving a message like this is just making this whole experience even better. It just brought me so much joy. Thank you so much for this message. Now, part 2 of our call out.
There's more.
Of our shout out is also to Balki Duds. because Balki Duds also left us an audio clip, and it's such a great clip. We want to play the entirety of it. So buckle up. It's a couple minutes long. Let's hear what Balki Duds had to say.
Hi, Sophia. Hi, Imran. This is Rainey from Balki Duds.
Hi, Rainey.
And if you have not heard of Balki Duds before, it is an Instagram account where I have been cataloging Balki Bartokomous' amazing vests and applique shirts.
It's amazing.
I've been sticking mostly to those things. However, I'm also getting really excited about some of the costumes and ridiculous accessories he's had on the show. I am just about to start season 6 and my own personal rewatch. However, I just revisited season 2, episode 17, since I knew that was what you were doing this week. And in this episode, I saw 2 vests that I did not have cataloged yet because I did not, I wasn't keeping track back in season 2 yet. So in this episode, we have Camp Anti-Gravity is what I'm going to call it. And we have
vests.
She names the vest. This is great.
Love it.
Dog door. So Camp Anti-Gravity is what we see during the kind of second third of the episode. It's red and it has what look like little floating tents or teepees.
Yep.
So I always tend to go with my sort of first instinct name for these things so that I'm likely to remember them later. And yes, I absolutely do have a ridiculous spreadsheet going, which you can see as a Google Doc on my Instagram. There's a link.
Amazing.
The other vest in this episode is called Trogdor. I'm assuming probably a good majority of your listeners are familiar with Trogdor the Burninator, the famous internet dragon.
Okay, wait, pause.
I didn't know there were famous internet dragons.
Rainey, thank you for introducing us to Trogdor. I had no idea. I don't know what Trogdor is, but she's calling this one Trogdor, the famous internet. We might be a little bit too old. We lost.
Okay,
I'm going to look it up.
We're going to do our homework and look up Trogdor. Yes,
we will get caught up on Trogdor, Rainey. Thank you.
And this vest has a large plant or flower on the back. Yep. And I think what it really is around the front is all these sort of red vines and little tendrils coming off the plant, but they definitely look like dragons to me. So nice that is what I'm going with. And it was very cool to see these 2. I am going to be adding them into my spreadsheet. And I don't know if your listeners already know this, but apparently Bronson Pinchot purchased the fabric for all of these vests from Greece. Wow. I think they're all from Greece, or at least most were, or that area. And some of them were over 100 years old at the time. And he brought them back, and the costume designer made these vests custom for him, which is ridiculous.
That's amazing.
And awesome. So I love it. And yeah, I look forward to catching up with your podcast. And again, my Instagram is Balki Duds, DUDS, and it's all one word. Thanks, guys.
Oh my God, Rainey's awesome.
Thank you, Rainey. That was so great. And Imran and I were talking about this, and we would love to invite Rainey back on the show as whenever she would like to come and leave us more messages about Duds as we go through this. Let's all go through this together and talk about Balki's clothes.
I think this would be a fantastic, like, semi-recurring segment on the show. Absolutely, because look, we just learned. I didn't know that thing about that he bought the clothes from Greece and they're 100 years old. I had no idea those were all custom made for the show, and he picked them out. We just learned something. That's what I love, Rainey. You nailed it.
Rainey,
check out
you.
at Balki Duds on Instagram.
Everyone follow Balki Duds, and if you want to hear more from Rainey on our show. Just like that, at the end, let us know if you think that's a good idea, if that's something you want more of, and we will
and hit her up, send her a message.
Work up a contract with Balki Duds.
Balki Duds recurring segment would be great. She said when we post the episode, she's going to post pictures of the vests so you can see
we'll
what
link
she's
to that
about.
as well in our show notes.
That was so great. So this was just the most random, weird, niche, wonderful thing that happened this week.
Such a world we fell into.
So
I'm so happy that this pandemic has led us into this world of Perfect Strangers fandom where things like Balki Duds exist. I would also love to see an Instagram account like
Mark
Dimitri's
hair.
Dimitri Instagram account, like
I
as
was thinking
Dimitri.
about that. Yeah.
Right?
All
And
the Dimitri appearances.
Costumes, Dimitri's thoughts and feelings about things.
Oh my God, a Dimitri account. That's
a Dimitri Twitter account or a Dimitri.
We might have to start doing that on our podcast, like Post Ask Dimitri on our Instagram
You heard it
account.
here first, folks. You heard it here first.
So many ideas that could grow out of this. I thought we were niche, and Rainey out niched us. Well done.
But, I'll say it again. Rainey at Balki Duds, our other fans who have been
awesome.
constant in communicating with us. We love it so much. It really makes us so happy, and it makes this whole experience so much more fun. So keep it coming. And I love that we're in this little world together, and we're getting through this with the joy that Perfect Strangers brings to us all.
It's so wild. I'm loving it. Make sure you subscribe, listener, because next week is kind of a first special episode. Larry tries to be a ski expert overnight, of course, on a group skiing trip, and it's the first part of a two-parter.
Two-parter?
What? A two-parter? What is this? What do they think they are? Two-parter, Perfect Strangers. Oh, man.
Also, two-parters are not really a thing that happen anymore in modern television. Because we just binge watch it's all one big continuous story. And
it's always not
on sitcoms so much, but on other serials. But back in the day when we were watching TV as kids, this show and others, a two-parter was a big deal because it ended in a to be continued and some suspenseful music, and you had to wait till the next week.
Yeah, you know who did this best for me was the 60s Batman show, because there was always
Brady
some
Bunch
silly
did it a lot
thing.
too,
Brady Bunch had some great two-parters where they go to Hawaii, I think was a two-parter.
Yeah, I think multiple parters. The Grand Canyon, remember when they went to the Grand Canyon?
That was a two-parter, yeah. So it was always wow, two-parter. It continues. The story continues in this thing.
So they were special events. They were special occasions when it was a two-parter.
But you're right now, when you think of a Netflix series,
you don't
every
have to,
episode is a cliffhanger at the end. Yeah.
It's a 10-parter that you watch all in one night.
Just one long movie, yeah.
All right. Well, if you are enjoying this as much as we are, we would love to hear from you. Please visit danceofjoypod.com. There you can find all of our links to all of the places the podcast is available. You can like it. You can subscribe to it. You can listen to it. You can leave us a rating and a review in Apple Podcasts. That would be lovely. Also on the website, you can press a button on the bottom right of our site and leave us a voice message, just like Rainey at Balki Duds did. Or you can go old school and send us an email at danceofjoypod@gmail.com. You can also buy our merch there and send us a coffee, anything you want to do. But the easiest thing that you can do, and the thing we would appreciate the most, is to share this show with a friend, either through our social media accounts or word of mouth, or just send them a link. If you're having fun listening to us, please share the show with a friend, and we would love to hear from you.
Yes, thanks for listening this week, and now we are so happy.
Now we are so happy we do the dance of joy.
Hey. Boochie, boochie, boochie.